Miss Elizabeth Bennet had always dreamed of a career in fashion, and as luck would have it, her father had secured her a photo shoot for a new line of clothing. She was thrilled at the opportunity, and her boyfriend, Mr. Darcy, had offered to come along and offer his support. As the shoot began, Mr. Darcy watched from the sidelines as Elizabeth had her hair styled and makeup applied. He couldn't help but feel a little envious of her confidence and natural beauty, but he was content to simply be there for her. However, it soon became clear that the photographer, Mr. Bingley, was not satisfied with Elizabeth's performance. He seemed frustrated with her constant smiling and struggled to capture the desired pout that was so popular among models. "That's the look I want from you," Mr. Bingley declared, pointing at Mr. Darcy. "Come to think of it, that's exactly the look I want. What size are you, pal?" Mr. Darcy was shocked at the suggestion that he be the one to model the clothing. He protested, but Mr. Bingley insisted that androgynous models were all the rage and that the idea of a man wearing ultra-feminine clothing was an interesting concept to explore. Plus, he promised that Mr. Darcy would receive his own modeling fee. Elizabeth was initially upset at the suggestion, but she eventually warmed to the idea, and Mr. Darcy found himself rushed through hair and makeup. He was surprised at how well the makeup and styling suited him, and he couldn't help but feel a little excited at the prospect of being in front of the camera. As Mr. Bingley began taking photos of Mr. Darcy in various outfits and poses, he praised his perfect skin and eye color, and even went so far as to compliment his neck. Mr. Darcy couldn't help but blush at the attention, feeling a warmth spread throughout his face and neck. It wasn't until Mr. Darcy was in the burgundy outfit, complete with a little hat and bolero jacket, that he realized Elizabeth had left the photo shoot. He began to worry, wondering where she had gone and if she was okay. But Mr. Bingley seemed unfazed by her absence, continuing to direct Mr. Darcy and even borrowing a pendant from the hair and makeup artist to accessorize his neck. As the photo shoot came to a close, Mr. Darcy couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and he couldn't wait to find out where Elizabeth had gone and why. After the photo shoot, Mr. Darcy couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He was worried about Elizabeth and couldn't wait to find out where she had gone and why. As he waited for her to return, Mr. Darcy found himself reflecting on the events of the day. He had never imagined himself as a model, but he had to admit that he had enjoyed the experience. Mr. Bingley had praised his appearance and seemed genuinely interested in working with him in the future. But despite the excitement of the photo shoot, Mr. Darcy couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. He had enjoyed the attention and admiration from Mr. Bingley, and he couldn't help but wonder if he had developed feelings for the photographer. He had always considered himself a straight man, but he couldn't deny the attraction he felt towards Mr. Bingley. As these thoughts swirled through his mind, Elizabeth finally returned, looking upset and angry. Mr. Darcy immediately went to her, asking if she was okay and if there was anything he could do to help. Elizabeth tearfully explained that she had suspected for some time that Mr. Bingley was gay, and that she had witnessed him flirting with Mr. Darcy during the photo shoot. She had felt hurt and betrayed, and had left the shoot in a fit of emotion. Mr. Darcy was shocked by Elizabeth's confession, and he realized that he had to be honest with her about his own feelings. He admitted that he had developed feelings for Mr. Bingley, and that he wasn't sure what it meant for his own sexuality. Elizabeth was understanding and supportive, and the two of them spent the evening talking and coming to terms with Mr. Darcy's revelation. It was a difficult and emotional conversation, but they both knew that honesty and understanding were the key to their relationship. As they went to bed that night, Mr. Darcy couldn't help but feel a sense of hope and possibility. He knew that he had a lot to figure out about his own identity, but he was grateful to have Elizabeth by his side as he navigated this new journey. In the days following the photo shoot, Mr. Darcy found himself consumed by thoughts of Mr. Bingley and his own feelings. He knew that he needed to make a decision about his future, and he wasn't sure which path to take. On the one hand, he knew that pursuing a relationship with Mr. Bingley would mean facing potential judgment and rejection from friends and family. On the other hand, he couldn't deny his feelings and the possibility of a fulfilling and happy relationship with the photographer. Elizabeth was supportive of Mr. Darcy's decision, but she also encouraged him to think about what was best for himself and his future. She reminded him that he needed to be true to himself, and that he should follow his heart regardless of what others might think. Mr. Darcy knew that Elizabeth was right, and he made the difficult decision to reach out to Mr. Bingley and see if there was a possibility of a romantic relationship between them. He was nervous as he composed the message, but he knew that he couldn't ignore his feelings any longer. To his surprise, Mr. Bingley responded almost immediately, expressing his own feelings and interest in pursuing a relationship with Mr. Darcy. The two men arranged to meet and talk in person, and Mr. Darcy couldn't believe how easy it was to be himself around Mr. Bingley. They laughed and talked for hours, and Mr. Darcy knew that he had made the right decision in following his heart. As they parted ways that evening, Mr. Darcy couldn't wait to see Mr. Bingley again and explore the possibilities of their relationship. He knew that it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way with Mr. Bingley by his side. Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley's relationship quickly grew and flourished, and the two men found themselves falling deeper in love with each other every day. They faced their share of challenges, including judgment and discrimination from some members of their community, but they remained strong and committed to each other. Elizabeth was happy to see Mr. Darcy so in love and supportive of his relationship with Mr. Bingley. She knew that it had been a difficult journey for him, but she was glad to see him happy and true to himself. As the months passed, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley's relationship continued to grow, and they even decided to move in together. It was a big step, but one that they were both ready for. As they settled into their new home, Mr. Darcy couldn't believe how much his life had changed in such a short period of time. He had always been content with his life and his relationship with Elizabeth, but he had never expected to find love and happiness with someone like Mr. Bingley. He was grateful for the opportunity to model and the photo shoot that had brought them together, and he knew that he owed it all to Elizabeth's support and understanding. As they looked to the future, Mr. Darcy knew that he had a lot to be thankful for, and he couldn't wait to see what the future held for him and Mr. Bingley. As Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley's relationship continued to thrive, they knew that they wanted to spend the rest of their lives together. They decided to get married in a small ceremony surrounded by their loved ones, including Elizabeth, who was overjoyed to see her dear friend so happy. The wedding was a joyous occasion, filled with love and happiness, and Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley knew that they had found their happily ever after. As they settled into married life, the two men continued to work in the fashion industry, with Mr. Darcy even pursuing a career as an androgynous model. He found great success and enjoyment in his work, and he knew that he had Mr. Bingley to thank for his new path in life. As they looked to the future, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley knew that they had a lot to be grateful for. They had found love and happiness in each other, and they were excited to see what the future held for them. And as they looked back on their journey, they knew that it had all begun with a chance encounter at a photo shoot, and that love and happiness had been waiting for them all along.